messed up. Nailed it. I nailed it. Sorry, everyone. I had my thing in studio mode, and it did not actually switch. All right, we're being accosted by a cat, too. Oh, what a good start to the stream. Absolutely annihilating it right now, everybody. Oh, jeez. Woof. How's it going, everyone? Inky, are you going to come be on stream, or are you going to be a dickhead? Come here. Come here. Come on. Come hang out. Be a guest host. No? Okay, well. You can't do anything with these things, chat. All right, chat. Well, here's what we got going on today. We got a bunch of articles over the course of the last week or so about different competitive play formats. Well, not only competitive play, just play formats in 40k. And I wanted to just run through them and basically have together, we'll kind of communally get a little bit of a look at what we can expect to see from mission structure and the different play formats that will be available in 10th edition 40k. Because that's one thing that I have a video coming out about demons later on today. Demons are like totally, entirely based around mission composition. The entire faction mechanic is constructed around objective play, which is A, freaking so sick, but B, I think understanding how these missions are going to work is going to be is super powerful or super important. So that's what I thought we would do today. And yeah, I think yeah, that's what's going on. The cat's gonna cat. Yeah, there she goes. She'll open the door by herself. Ready? If you ever see that my door like suddenly opens or closes during my video recordings, this is why. You can do it. I believe in you. No, don't watch me do it. She'll get there. I believe in her. One sec. We'll see. We'll give her a second. Is she gonna do it? She can't do it while we're watching chat, I guess. All right, let's talk about some combat patrol. Ready to spam Doomsday arcs? Man, that new Doomsday arc profile is so sick. Flat 4 damage, devastating wounds on stationary, and +1 to hit. Ah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. So, the interesting thing about these combat patrol games, and I have a sneaking suspicion that this is gonna be a lot of people's first introduction to the 10th edition system, because they're gonna be simpler format. There's gonna be no list construction required. But I think the fact that it is a wholly distinct format from the standard 40k, and it has its own mission structure, it's not just like, well, you use the incursion mission set or whatever. It even has its own data sheets and theoretically its own balancing system. I think it's going to be really cool. So I'm crossing my fingers that it is, it can find its place as its own thing. Now, I think that I'd like to see a little bit of optionality from the combat patrol kits. Not in that I think you should like be able to construct your own, but I think that the use of enhancements and the enhancement mechanic and stuff like that can really like give a lot more uniqueness to different combat patrol builds individually. And we see a little bit of that in here. So this is specifically talking about basically the Leviathan boxed set combat patrol matchup. So Strike Force Octavius versus the Vardengast Swarm. Which interestingly gives character names to all of the characters in the combat patrol. So these combat patrols are very much meant to, I guess, kind of encapsulate a little bit of the background, where you're not constructing an entire Space Marine like battle company. Instead, you are actually like playing out a little bit of a force that exists in the narrative somewhere. Are demons going to be covered in this show too? We could talk about them, but I have a whole video that'll be out tonight. I recorded 2 videos today, so we have the Space Marine Captain video that's out. Was out a couple 2 hours ago or so you can go check that out on the channel. But then also, I'll have a whole discussion about demons. Oh, she did it. She opened the door. See, she's so skilled. She does tricks and stuff too, but not when people are watching. She just doesn't want to go through the effort, you know. Classic cat stuff. Good job, Binky. I'm proud of you. Combat Patrol is going to be not super popular among longtime players. Yeah, it might be. The other benefit of Combat Patrol, and this is something that my local community picked up Combat Patrol in a big way in 8th edition, or in 9th edition. was because you can play it in the evening, and you can still play 3 to 4 round tournaments because the games are only about an hour. So, like, you would get started at like 6 p.m., play 3 games, and be done by 9. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this system's going to have going to do the same thing. And if it uses most of the same mechanics as the full game in 40k, you get most of the same experience, but you can play it like after, work or whatever. So you don't necessarily need to dedicate literally an entire day or an entire weekend to play it, which I think is a benefit. So I think Combat Patrol, I would like to see Combat Patrol exist as a separate format of 40k. I also think Combat Patrol is a little bit more exciting than full-scale 40k, at least in the 9th edition version. It's like from a audience standpoint, it's insanely fun. Maybe, I don't know, it's a side grade, I think, for my player experience standpoint, but watching it and streaming it and playing it competitively is actually like really, really cool and interesting. Like individual, pile and consolidates matter way more if you have 10 models on the table versus having 150. So each of the combat patrols is basically going to function like a detachment. So you have your constructed list, and then you're getting on top of that stratagems and enhancements that are unique to that combat patrol. So the interesting, the optionality comes from getting multiple enhancements. So in this case, we can see that the Tyranids get 2. And I don't know if, it sounds like they have the default and optional just because there's one that you're like recommended to take, but you maybe don't need to. The default one might be a little bit like simpler just for new players, but then if you want the optionality, you can go to the other one. I'd like to see it where there's like a little bit more than that. Maybe there's 3 or 4. Maybe you switch them between games or something. It would be kind of cool, but I don't know. Apparently the Tyranid Prime in the Leviathan set is named the Terror of Vardengast on the Combat Patrol box. It will just be a generic Tyranid Prime, but it has a name in Combat Patrol. And it gets -1 to be hit in melee and a 4+ invulnerable save. Interestingly, it grants the Lone Operative ability. I wonder if that means that Tyranid Primes will not have the Lone Operative ability as default. So you have to add them to a unit. That would be kind of weird. Or it might be that the Tyranid Prime... I guess it's a Combat Patrol thing, so it might be totally different than the full version. So you can't read too much into it, but it could also be that it gets a Lone Operative effect in certain situations, and then the enhancement makes it permanent all the time, which would be pretty powerful. Getting Lone Operative with no restrictions is pretty insane. You just can't shoot it within 12, full stop, or outside 12, full stop. The other one is the Secretion Gland, which is just a +1 AP to something within 6. Also, it works on both ranged and melee attacks, which is pretty powerful. And also, it's any Tyranid unit. And this is, man, I'm so glad that the core keyword's gone. What a weight off. You don't have to do a double take every time you read an ability. You're like, oh, does the bearer benefit themselves from this? Does if I'm standing next to a tank, does it benefit? Is it say core and vehicle, or regiment and platoon and core or whatever? It just gives you the keyword to use it on. So, oh man, talking about the demon stuff, by the way, too, we saw some powerful aura effects on the demon units, and it being Legiones Demonica keyworded and not locked to like very specific unit type keywords. Oh my god, it's gonna be so much more easier to parse. Oof. Yeah, EP increase is huge, but also this thing can just point at itself is the point that I was trying to make. Even if it's the only thing left on the table, it just gives itself +1 AP, which is actually pretty solid. Now, I like this idea as well. Battle line units can lock in objective markers. That gives them the opportunity to put many objective markers on the table and not make it impossible to score them. The one problem you run into with Incursion and Combat Patrol missions is that if they have too many objective markers, you end up basically either having units that are strung between 2 and can't move, or you have units that just like sort of stand and do nothing for the entire game because you just dot the individual models around every single objective on the table. And it gets really boring. So not to mention the fact that battle line units are usually pretty bad in low-scale games because as idiosyncratic as it sounds, they just don't stack up well enough with the more elite stuff that they just get vaporized like immediately. So having battle line units have an additional effect in Combat Patrol I really like. It gives them more opportunity to like just lock in, you know, kind of idiot mooks into Combat Patrol boxes without you feeling really bad about it. You're like, oh, great, my box has 5 units of intercessors in it. Well, what a time. I guess they also get a benefit from the battle line keyword that they wouldn't normally in the big games. Or they wouldn't normally in Combat Patrol because the only benefit in the larger games is that it makes your list building easier. And you're not doing list building in Combat Patrol, so it's kind of required. Core is dumb. Yeah, Core was such a mistake. Oh my god. I was so apprehensive of that mechanic as soon as it was spoiled at the beginning of 9th edition. And man, I mean, it seemed like it was going to be okay for a while, but the problem was that there was never a core equivalent elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like either you had core and you were good, or you didn't and you were hot garbage. There was never an effect that would benefit a non-core keyword. And I think the best example is like Space Marines, right? Where you had infantry were core and then vehicles weren't core. But there wasn't enough like mechanical framework to support vehicles that you would ever take vehicles over non-core units. Over core units, because core units got every single other buff in the codex. And then they just printed Redemptor Dreadnoughts that had both, and you were just like, okay, so I will never take a tank again, I guess, until they get, like, literally halved in points, 2 years down the road. Absolute chicanery. What a terrible idea of a mechanic. I'm so glad it's gone. I think the new system's going to play a lot better. Less auras, less, like, checking for distance. You just lock your characters into a unit, and then they benefit the unit full stop, and then you're done. Seems good. Problem I had with Combat Patrols always feels really biased towards fast melee units. Yeah, it can be. Fast melee units, fast units in general are really good in Combat Patrol because they tend to be pretty lethal. I think the limitation of list building means that there's all of that like the broken combinations you would construct in Combat Patrol are gone. Basically, going through every faction in the game, you could build kind of one build that was super dumb, and it would usually revolve around like one combination of characters or units that was like super insane. Like Space Marines could build one Smash Captain that was like tank the table, and you would construct a Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knight who was ridiculous, and you would build a Hive Tyrant who was ridiculous, and there was basically very little way for other units to compete in that metagame. So restricting the list construction definitely is the way to make it so that it's not just, a game where the person who just takes their most powerful Smash character combinations out of their main list and runs them in Combat Patrol wins every game. GW is not good at costing speed. I agree with that, but I think it works both ways. There have been historically, and I'm sure still are, units that are extremely fast that are also unplayably garbage. Like, you never see scout bikers, you know what I mean? Because you have to be fast and do something. And I think the problem is that Games Workshop habitually doesn't recognize that the speed facilitates another effect. So, like, land speeders are really good because they're cheap firepower, and then they're also super fast. And so you're able to get that firepower on target immediately because they're so fast they basically just deep strike, which is kind of funky. Seems they change rules just to change rules. To some extent they for sure do. And also I don't think you can point necessarily at, like, Games Workshop's not, or the design team, isn't this like monolith that's unchanging. Like, they get new designers, and the ethos of the team, I imagine, shifts over time. And so there are decisions made in previous editions that they then go back on or reconsider, or there's a new designer who makes a different decision on the new edition. So I don't know how much of it's like, oh, we'll just change the rule to make things different. and how much of it is, actual change for a reason. But there are some changes that they make just that are a little bit frivolous, for sure. Like to change some sequencing. Like I think the order of operations, like statistical change in 9th edition felt like very weird and kind of incongruous. Just little stuff for the most part. Now the other thing the Combat Patrol will include are secondary objectives, and it sounds like every Combat Patrol gets its own secondary objective. So unlike the full system, the full GT or whatever they're calling the mission structure, the mission pack system, where you have 2 secondary objectives, and your secondary objectives are selected from a common pool. Your Combat Patrol has secondary objectives constructed specifically for it. Which is, I don't know, that feels a little scary. If you have a Combat Patrol just with a ridiculous secondary, you just be like, well, okay. I guess I win. But it might be, it is what it is. And those also may be easy to change. I don't know where these are going to be like printed. Maybe you come with. Do you think they come with rules in the Combat Patrol kit? Probably not, right? Each Combat Patrol is given a full set of self-contained rules. Are they in the Combat Patrol? Because I wonder what the level of errata they'll do to this system is. Probably not very much, right? But if there's a secondary that's like super busted and no other Combat Patrol can beat one of them because of its secondary, then like, do they fix it? I don't know. It doesn't really matter, I think, from a new player perspective. But if you wanted to play this as a format more often, then it would be kind of annoying. Be curious to see if GW outlines a set of table layouts. Well, the problem was that they didn't in last edition. In 9th edition, they didn't do that. And in 8th edition, they didn't even have terrain rules, basically. I don't know if there's ever been a time that Games Workshop has specified. They used to have like sectioned terrain placement rules, right? Where you would divide the table into like quadrants, and then the terrain would get placed. I believe that there was like a player place terrain rules maybe in 4th edition, maybe 5th. I don't know how it looked in 6th and 7th though. But 8th through 9th, there was no terrain. Like the terrain rules were just Wild West. It was just basically wasteland. But I would like to see, terrain. Oh, hello there. I would like to see some terrain guidance for sure. Here's a cat. She's back. Assume that the Combat Patrols are a PDF? Yeah, that would make total sense. Some older Combat Patrols are going to get weird since they're split in points. Well, the difference is that there are no points. The Combat Patrols mechanics have been designed independently to fight each other, so that you're not basing on it on a point system. And theoretically, that also means that they survive codex changes because they use a different set of rules, like a different but similar set of rules. Unless we see codexes, the big question mark right now is how similar the indexes are going to be to codexes. And they said the first set of codexes will basically be identical to indexes, but it would be weird if like they release a Combat Patrol that's similar to the index data sheets, then release a codex for it later that has totally different mechanics on those data sheets. Should be a little bit funky. And then they each have their own sets of stratagems. I don't know. Looks like the Tyranids can redeploy a Termagant unit once it's destroyed. They only have one, right? So it's either you Endless Swarm D6 back in, or you get an entire new unit of 2D6 Termagants. Man, imagine you roll double ones on that. They have 2 units of Termagants. Okay. Now, another thing that stood out to me is that we saw the double. There's 2 Termagant units. One has the 2 Termagant data sheets that have been displayed. One of them has the reactive movement ability, and the other one has Ripper Swarms attached. Neither of them have had this Combat Patrol data sheet marker in them. And the going theory was that one of the datasheets was for Combat Patrol and the other one wasn't, but it doesn't. Neither of them had the indicator that they were a Combat Patrol datasheet, which we didn't know what it looked like before, but now we do. So that's a little funky. So we don't know if those are indeed for Combat Patrol or if they just literally sent the wrong datasheet to everybody and we just have an extra datasheet that's worthless. Although from reports from Warhammer Fest, they were using the datasheet that had the Ripper Swarms inside it, which is a little bit sad. That one didn't seem quite as good, but it is what it is. Do I think they will sell datasheet packs? They will. Well, they have. They have confirmed already that card sets of all of the data sheets and stratagems on cards will be available for every faction on release. So that is confirmed for sure. Well, you have to. There has to be a pretty clear indicator between the two, so that you don't have people like rocking Combat Patrol data sheets in the wrong format and vice versa. I'm even surprised that they look as similar as they do, to be honest. Like, I would almost expect, like, different art at the front or something. And I guess it's a little bit different, but... I don't know. I actually really like... I like the placement of the invulnerable save characteristic here a lot better. Why isn't that there on the full data sheet? Somebody... literally, as I was starting the stream, I was reading through some comments, and somebody made the comment that invulnerable saves should be put on in the stat block because otherwise they're going to get missed. And I think that is that's a very good point. And I think that the invulnerable save is placed in the stat block in the Combat Patrol data sheets. It's weird that they're not in the regular one. That's strange. All right, we talked about the secondary objectives. They're pretty interesting. 2 VP each phase. Each time a captain destroy one or more enemy models. Or even like sort of disincentivizes your opponent from engaging with that guy. Because as long as he shoots a Stormbolter at a Termagant and gets a kill, he scores 2 points. But then Shock Tactics is 5 victory points at the end of each turn if you steal an objective marker. This is an interesting stratagem. So it's fight phase, you get reroll wounds of 1 or full rerolls against monsters or vehicles. And Nick, in this matchup specifically, is there the Psychovore? Yeah, so you get rerolls against the Psychovore, I guess. But everything else in this should be infantry keyworded. But that seems incredibly strong into like some of the more vehicle-focused combat patrols. I wonder if they say how many stratagems they get. 3 stratagems? So 1/3 of your stratagems just go sort of like makes your Terminators cleave vehicles in half. Pretty good. Especially if they get Chain Fists. So they maybe just be Power Fists, which means they'd be winning on 5s rerolling, so they may actually be one of the... They may actually be able to sort of overcome the comparatively weaker strength of Power Fists into vehicle profiles. We'll see. But anyway, I'm really interested in Combat Patrol. I hope that it as a format is interesting enough, not as a like replacement to 40k, but as like a sub game. One thing, it's always interesting that to me that 40k is such a large miniature game, but has never really supported multiple play formats in a realistic way. And I think that there being Combat Patrol plus just normal mission pack play is really interesting. You know, this is a total non sequitur too, but now I'm looking at this picture here, chat. Does this zoom? I don't know if we saw the top of these Termagants. They have a lot of armor on them. These are really cool, actually. I haven't seen that that angle from them. Holy crap! They look like I don't know, little little scorpions, I guess. That looks pretty sweet. Do I think there will be different data sheets between matched play and Crusade? No, I don't think so. I think that Crusade will just be matched play, but there will be some additional rules on top. I doubt that there's too much else going on. What's going on with this guy's flamer? Is this an actual model in the Infernus unit? He has his flamer, like, hooked on his belt, facing forward. What the fuck is that? Maybe it's, like, down and the angle's weird. Oh, it is down. Yeah, it's on this side. That's a very strange angle. Are the Rippers new sculpts? They are, yeah. They are... I think they're like slightly different. They're like 2% different than the current ones. Like they have a higher, they're like higher fidelity, but they don't actually change any of the features, so they look identical. But I think they have more armor plates, and I think their legs are like higher detail or something. Interested if they would discuss Sister's lack of anti-tank weapons since Melta isn't looking so solid. Well, I imagine that we see... I mean, they've been showing off basically the biggest anti-tank weapon in every faction gets shown off, right? So I have a hard time imagining that they don't show off Exorcist missile launchers, which I imagine will be like las cannon equivalents. It'll be like a multi-shot D6 plus 1 damage, like big strength 12, strength 13 or something. Yeah, the Rippers don't actually look that functionally different. I think we can see a picture in the Termagant article about them. If we go to the top. No. I think it's in here. Oh, maybe not. Just kidding. I've taken us on a wild goose chase, chat. I apologize. There is a closer picture of the Rippers somewhere, but I don't know where it is. Maybe just in the Leviathan. Oh, they didn't put actually like the Leviathan breakdown in this link. I was looking for it earlier. You have to actually go search for it in the Warhammer community. So if you want to see all the Leviathan models, it's kind of hard to get to. All right. Anyway, chat. Let's dive into the mission rules. Where are they? Are those also in here, or did they forget to put them in also? They talked about weapons, talked about tanks, detachments, characters, unit profiles. Is it this one? No, this is the one where they have a little interview. That's annoying. Useless page this is. Just has like half the articles in it. So they released 2 articles about mission rules. Is the over-under. And what I want to do is just sort of push us through a recap of the original one, which was a week and a half ago, I think. This one looks right. Just kidding. Oh, here we go. The Gambits. So the mission deck system, I guess, is the official name of the system. It comes with deployment and mission rule cards plus primary mission. Now, one thing that was a huge open question, and I saw this complaint levied against the system from a lot of people when it was originally announced, was that like, oh no, now all the missions will be random and you'll play like unbalanced combinations of them. And they said it both in the in this article right here, but they also say it in the next article that there will be recommended combinations of these for use with competitive play. So it will basically create 2 separate formats that you can play. You can play the full random, where you shuffle all the cards together and then draw them, or you can play the ones where they give you like more competitively viable situations. And I think like playing, every once in a while playing an event or something with random cards could be fun. But generally speaking, competitive play will use the preset missions. And then the only things that will change from mission to mission or the only things that would change between games would be your secondary missions and gambits. Like your preset missions would be the same for every event that you play them at. So I like that. I think that it reduces it reduces the striation between more competitive play and more casual play, and I think there's a bunch of reasons for that. Obviously, from my end, it seems good because we no longer have this distinction where if someone's playing GT or ITC or any of these formats, suddenly like anything that they talk about has to be caveated with the format that they're playing. And it becomes irrelevant for people not playing in that format. And this was so bad in 8th edition. You could talk about People's Armies all day in 8th edition, but every stupid GT had its own dumb mission format because the GW missions, like bespoke missions, were unplayably bad. And so even within the competitive community, you had like 12 different, cliques of people who would all play their own mission format, and nobody wanted to play anyone else's. And now we also get to combine that with people who are playing more casually and playing more narratively constructed missions, and I think that that's awesome. Where like suddenly it feels more like a community rule set rather than everyone getting their own little like pocket, basically, where like everyone's separated out. It also means that there's somehow Games Workshop has found a way to create less product for them to sell, which I appreciate, instead of like having 4 different decks, like one for narrative, one for open, one for competitive, like one for, I don't know, Combat Patrol. Now there's just one that you play with. I think that's also great. I'm sure Combat Patrol will have its own missions or something, but I think that the fact that it's all going to be rolled together is really good. And then also, like, yeah, you get to advise people and discuss games using the same rule set, which, it's going to be sweet. So, I super like the system. I think it's pretty good. We have basically gotten this confirmation that primary objectives are going to be scoring higher. So this one in particular, this Take and Hold mission, is a hold 1 for 5 up to 3. So while they're probably going to be hold 2s and, hold mores and stuff like that elsewhere in the deck, scoring up to 15 VP per round just for holding objectives is pretty fast. And it sounds like the scoring breakdown will be similar to 9th edition. You'll have 50 points, available for primary, then 40 points available for secondary, and 10 for painting. Unfortunately, that sounds like it's coming back. So there's more of a focus on primary objective scoring, and the primary objectives are going to be a little bit swingier. And I think I appreciate that, because as we've kind of been learning in 9th edition, is that the secondary objective system is flawed, to say the least, especially the faction secondary system. Not having everyone play with the same rule set is cool and interesting, but if it's not constantly upkept with balance changes, it can really unbalance some factions. So I think a greater focus on primary objective is just going to incentivize more interaction between players, and I think that's great. So excited for that. Now, we talked about this. We talked about the on video I did about it. We have the secondary missions. I believe that the article that we'll talk about next has already covered exactly how those work, and we talked about the Gambit cards, which you can replace your final 2 rounds of scoring with an alternate scoring mode, which is pretty wild. Very interested to see what changes are made with Tau rules. There's a lot of people asking about Tau, and I don't know. There's some wild rumors swirling about Tau too. So I'm also interested to see how Tau work out. Who knows? We'll have to see. I'm hoping that they're one of the earlier factions on the roster for getting preview article, but I don't know. I think they're the biggest. They're probably the biggest open question for sure about how they work. Do I think that crisis commanders will have to join a unit of crisis suits? 100% I do. For sure. I think you could see cold stars with lone operative. But I think 100%. At least like crisis commanders and stuff will they won't have to join a unit of crisis suits, but they'll be an independent unit if they don't, so they'll just get shot to death and die. Bleep, 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 bleep. What was the last one? Oh, the last scoring metric was painting. To my knowledge, painting is returning. So as long as you're battle ready painted, you get 10 points at the end, which honestly is like kind of a nothing. It's a big nothing burger. Most events give you 2 automatically. Online events give it to you automatically. Larger events like will just require painting anyway, so it's not even like everyone will just get it. So occasionally you run into GT level events like between 24 and like 50 players maybe that don't require painting but do implement the battle ready score. But like those are the only events where I've seen it matter. It's kind of, I don't know, it's a big nothing. It's annoying. How do you make Death Guard distinct given all the toughness buffs? I think that, well, it sounds like a lot of the stuff that's already high toughness will just continue to get higher. We've been seeing, obviously, Terminators went from 4 to 5, Gravis Armor's going from 5 to 6. I could see Death Guard going to 6 and having like a smattering of 7s in there. To make those like mid-range, you know, we just saw this these Relic Blade profiles that are like strength 5. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of like strength 5-ish, strength 6-ish weapons on the infantry level, and being like toughness 6 to 7 actually defeats a ton of that. So yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. You'll probably get hammered just as hard by anti-tank, but being able to force a lot of the more powerful anti-infantry stuff to win at 5s is a really big deal. More wounds would be cool too, yeah. I do like that. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see as well if they, you know, so far, nothing that we have seen has had a damage reduction effect built in. So there's been, like, all the Dreadnoughts take full damage from everything. Bellicor lost his damage reduction. So it's an open question whether or not we see the damage reduction stay for smaller things. So like Paragon Warsuits, you know, Enforcer Commanders, we were just talking about Tau, Enforcer Battlesuits, Death Guard, like will they retain their damage reduction? I don't know. I can't tell you. It seems like Feel No Pain, I imagine, is going to be getting removed in a lot of cases, and I think damage reduction as well, just to make the game like flow a little bit faster. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that ability go away, which would be a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. All right, chat. So we gave our background summary of the existing, the already previewed mission rules. We talked about the combat patrol mission rules, and now we can talk about this article that discussed. This is from yesterday, I believe, and this discusses the objective cards. Now, I haven't dived too deeply into this one yet. I just haven't had the time. So a lot of the stuff might be new to me, but I did do a little bit of a skim read, so I got a little bit of background information from it. If Feel No Pain only works against 1 damage, you could see it getting for everything. That would shock me. That would shock me to no end. I mean, who knows? It could be the case, but I would be surprised. I wouldn't. They've indicated in the past that mechanics that everyone, like colloquialisms that everyone used that are then becoming official terms, are not being like wildly reworked. And I think Feel No Pain was an example they gave when talking about that. So I would expect Feel No Pain to work exactly how Damage Ignore rolls did in the previous in 9th edition. I would not expect them to change, but who knows? You know, everything's on the table for sure. Inky's back. Inky, you want to say hi to the camera? Come say hi. Here you go. Whoa. Look at this kitty cat. No. You're a little shy. Aw, that's cute. You sit on my lap. There you go. Good cameo, Inky. You did great. I don't have my treats with me here, unfortunately. Shumai, she got a treat on camera. She got a treat on camera for you. You just, it's not my fault that you missed it. You can go back and watch the VOD. It's there. She eats the F out of that treat. All right, she's going to sit here for a while. She showed up. She likes to do this. She rests on my arm. Oh, come on. There you go. Good job. This is the Inky show. We're not talking about tournaments today, chat. We're talking about the cats. So they talked about how secondary objective selection became samey. And you could probably tailor your army to effectively score points without ever setting up a model. Yeah, I mean, that was, to be fair, I don't know how much that was a tailoring of the army as much as it was a misbalance of the secondary objectives. You know, I'm looking at, I guess they showed Deathwing here. We're like they showed Deathwing versus Orcs, so we're throwing shade at like Gretchen and Stubborn Defiance, but like real talk, its Inflexible Command is the number one. Scoring 5 points a turn while sitting your entire army in a deployment zone is absolutely ludicrous. A Dark Angels player could load up on a hardy units knowing they could sit on an objective all game if it was still a secondary in a way which an Orc player could not. What are you talking about? Get the Good Bits is a secondary. GW. Get out of here. Both of these factions had a dumb auto max secondary. The Dark Angels one was way worse. Stubborn Defiance is way worse against the Good Bits too. It's like not even a competition. Dark Angels secondaries are good, but I would say Dark Angels secondaries pale in comparison to Orc secondaries. Orc secondaries are like keeping outside of like YOLO, win the roll to go first and bum rush your opponent builds. Orc secondaries are basically keeping that faction alive in 9th edition. So they talk about the combination of the Tempest and Grand Tournament formats. They give us a little bit of a preview of Take and Hold, but this we already saw. We just talked about this in the other article, so that's not new information. 9 primary missions in the deck. Some of them are radically different, coupled with 5 different deployment maps and 12 different mission rules. So it's interesting. I guess that is sort of how they constructed the Grand Tournament format, where it sounds like it's... I have to imagine that the combination of objectives and mission rules and deployments that created the Grand Tournament pack will be will exist also in this pack as well. So you can just create the 9th edition. It sounds like you can create basically the 9th edition missions out of the 10th edition format with a little bit of changes. But then it also sounds like because there are only so many primary objective setups, like there are deployment maps. There are 2 deployment maps, 3 deployment maps that are basically reused in Grand Tournament Arcs of Omen. So it sounds like well, I guess they only have 5 deployment maps. So they're adding additional mission rules and additional primary mission components to make the setup different. Yeah, I guess the primary missions being different is interesting. I wonder if they have more examples. To my knowledge, the game's still 5 turn set. I don't know if they've ever said that, but I think that it's been implied. I would be shocked if it wasn't 5 turns, to be fair. I wonder how fighting against 4 wound Terminators are. So Storm Shields are +1 wound. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, because I think there's been a lot of discussion, at least there's been a lot of weapons that look like they're sort of tailor-made to kill Terminators. And this Terminator's randomly being able to get access to 4 wounds, if that's the case, defeat basically most of those. Those Doomsday Arcs, though. Those Doomsday Arcs are laughing all the way to the bank. They're like, oh, I didn't even lose efficiency. Whatever. Get wrecked. Ba-boo. Limited foil booster decks. gets like randomly assorted primary objectives that you can add into your deck. So you can construct a like a mathematically superior mission deck than your opponent. So interestingly, it sounds like the previous article that we talked about indicated there were two separate sets of objectives, and there was like an attacker set and a defender set, and showed them off as being different. But it sounds like those are both going to be identical. So the distinction is just so that you can, like, I guess it's easier indicating on the table, like, which secondary objectives are active for which player, the attacker versus the defender. I hope that the attacker versus defender distinction is meaningful in this system. They haven't really talked about that at all, but it didn't do anything. It's just who deploys first in 9th edition, which is very annoying. Make it do something. I don't know. Make asymmetric missions, GW, please. Let's go. So the difference is that you only have a selection of 7 missions that are fixed. So you have 9 wholly tactical missions. These are the ones that you can draw and then discard when you complete them. But only 7 are fixed. So I imagine that those are the most boring ones, to be honest. Tactical missions are more random and therefore riskier. But the one thing that was previewed was this they have so much more. They basically mesh into the command point economy of the game in a really interesting way. Like we talked about before, you get 40 points from secondary missions. Fixed mission players get 20 points from each fixed mission. The tactical missions, you get 40 points total, regardless of the number of tactical missions you get. So that makes a little sense. It's just 40 BP. You discard each tactical mission the moment they achieve it and replace cards in their next command phase. So you can't go, a huge success. But what you can do is basically cycle them. So you can discard 1 active secondary mission and draw a new one for 1 command point. It's a little costly. 1 command point does kind of sound like a lot, and it kind of depends on how much command point regeneration we're going to see. But you can also gain command points by discarding active secondary missions and not scoring them. Oh, I guess it's only on tactical missions, not fixed missions. So you can't like complete your fixed mission and then discard what it is to get a command point. You only do it for tactical, but it means that you have 2 ways to get rid of tactical missions. If you need to score highly, if it's late game, you can pay the CP to discard 1 objective and replace it to try to get one that's easier to score. But if you can't score it, you might as well discard it and gain a command point. That feels a little bit overpowered. I don't know. But it does mean that you'll basically... you will only restock cards in your own command phase, right? So basically you will flip a card. You'll only get 10 cards over the course of the game. So you have to score an average of 4 VPs per card. If you discard a card and now you're down to 9, now you have to score 5. Is that right? No, 4.5, right? How does that math work? Yeah, you have to score 40 VPs off 10 cards, so 4 VPs per. Scoring off 9 would be, 4 and a little bit. Which does make it tougher, but hopefully it's easier if you get more command points. Yeah, 1 CP per player turn, I believe, is what the command point construction is. Every command phase, both players will get a command point, is what it sounds like. So basically, it's like playing 9th edition, like Arcs of Omen, but you just don't start with any command points, which is fair because there's no enhancements to start with either. So there's no pregame stratagems as far as we know. So honestly, I don't know if in most situations, most players were starting with maybe 1 or 2 command points, and now you'll start with 0 instead. But you'll probably have more ways to regenerate command points because basically every faction we've seen so far has had a way to get more command points. like baked into the faction construction. So it actually doesn't feel like it'll play that much differently, especially because you get 3 relics and warlord traits for free, basically. Won't turn units use the GT pack anyhow? This is the GT pack, chat. The mission deck system is entirely placing the grand tournament system. There will no longer be mission GT packs. Full stop. But here's the thing, right? The tactical objective system, the intention of the tactical objective system is to be an option over basically the classic secondary system where you just pick your secondaries and then you play them. So they're meant to play together. I think it would be a disservice to the system as a whole to write off tactical objectives immediately. To be like, oh, it's a random system, we just won't use them. That's not the intention of the entire mission structure. The mission structure is supposed to have them as an option, a competitive option, where, you know, if you don't have good secondary selections in a matchup, you can pick tacticals and you can flip through them. And it also means that if you build an army that's good at scoring the majority of the tacticals in the deck, you can maybe get a command point bonus on top of your opponent by identifying secondaries that you cannot score and discarding them for command points. I think that's super cool. And I hope that the two systems are balanced against each other. I mean, obviously it's 40k, so there's going to be a problem somewhere, and hopefully it will get addressed pretty quickly. But I think that I don't know. I'm a huge fan of like player expression and player optionality, and so the fact that 2 players can play totally asymmetric games is like super cool to me. In 9th edition, both players are starting with like banners on the table. There's so many secondaries where both players lock in the same secondary and then just do the same game plan and look at each other for the entire game. And you're going to get that so much less often in 10th edition, and I think that's amazing. Is there a bit of text in the bottom for GT packs? Let's see. We haven't gotten to the bottom yet. We can take a quick look at a footnote. There will be an updated GT pack, which will include a suggested combinations of missions. So this is what we just talked about. The card decks are the same, but if you're playing in a tournament, you are disincentivized, or you are dissuaded from drawing the mission structure randomly. So the difference is that the secondary objectives using the random cards we just talked about, fixed versus tactical secondary objectives, are going to be chosen at the table by the players. There are 2 ways to generate the scenario that you play with the objectives that are on the table, and those are either playing from the packet, which Games Workshop suggests, or drawing the cards randomly. And you can do either one. It's up to the TO if you're playing in an organized play environment, or you can just do whatever you want if you're playing at home. But I imagine most people will use the suggested layouts of missions, but the secondaries will all have those options that we just spoke about. The difference is the actual 40mm discs on the table and where they go and how many points you score for holding them. Those are what is what's being described in the packet, and the secondary objectives are different. Will 4 objective markers be pre-placed in the GT pack or still be roll-off? So it sounds like there's still a lot of misinformation and maybe some misunderstanding about the mission packs. So the 4 objective marker thing, I believe that comes from maybe when they talked about Gambits. So I believe that comes from the open war mission system. Let's just check if it was in the Gambit thing. So 40k has basically, there's always been I have no idea where they talk about open war, but habitually 40k gets a new player introductory scenario that they can play before they dive into the full system. And that is usually called open war. And I think they talked about it previously, where it's 4 objectives that are player placed, and then you get points for holding them and some other stuff. That every edition has had some version of that, which basically has been the same. That's intended for like Baby's first game of 40k. You play that rather than getting an entire book of deck of cards to play with and going through secondary objectives and all this complicated stuff. The actual... Oh no, my camera died. The actual... See if I can fix that real quick. The actual mission structure will have its objectives... There it is. Nice. We'll have its objectives placed by the cards themselves. So the objectives that tell you where the deployment zones are will also tell you where the objectives on the table are and how many there are. It will most likely be greater than 4. I think they said it might be more than they had previously. So it could be anywhere from like 3 to 8, honestly. But the open war format is just its own structure. I wouldn't expect to play that like in organized play systems. So that's the so I guess like sort of to clarify, right? There's like 3 variations of mission that are all within this overarching system. There's open war, which is super simple, 4 objectives, like learn how you play 40k. There's mission deck random, which is you take the mission deck and you draw your missions out of it randomly. Then there's the GT mission deck, which is that you take cards from the mission deck and use them in a suggested combination. Though any of the games using the mission deck will use fixed or tactical secondaries, and that is up to each individual player whether or not they use those. And those are sort of baked in. Inky might have killed the camera, chat. Inky's like she's like a Doctor Who monster, where if she's ever like displayed on camera for too long, it like bugs out or something. Like you forget that she exists if you like look at her for too long or something. As a kill team player, card-based missions work great. I think it's a good idea. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's gonna like the level of I don't know, the level of like readability the game has is gonna be so much easier. So instead of like going through like, what does the GT book have right now? Like 100 secondaries in it. Instead of going through a huge like fuck off lists of secondaries, you have a couple of them. They're on cards. You can just look at the cards for the mission. You don't have to like go through a book or anything. I don't know. I think it's going to be really easy to... it's going to be a lot easier to parse through. Turns out, Games Workshop finally coming around to the fact that like card-based systems are really, really effective and that the games have been using them for a really long time. We got to get some Inky art commission, chat. We need like an Inky emote for chat, for sure. I have a lot of updates I want to do to the channel between now and the release of 10th edition, and I think that's probably one of them for sure. 96 secondaries? Too many. That's too many secondaries, chat. That's too many secondaries. You don't need that many. You could have less secondaries. All right, we talked about tactical missions and stuff. You can discard tactical missions. You can discard your secondary missions either to replace them for a CP or permanently to gain a CP. I think that system's super duper cool. And then they talked about Gambits. The Gambit decks are unfortunately identical as well. So Attacker Defender I think is very much confirmed to be JCP, just B. It's probably just Deploy First still, which is whatever, but it is what it is. I really want them to return Deploy First, Go First with different objective setups. Where like if you play on an identical board, like first player has less objectives on their side, but there are more in the middle or something, so that like they can push to the middle and get objectives, but they're less incentivized to just like chill in the back. I don't know. I hope they do something to make the first player thing a little bit more interesting. Because right now it's kind of insane. I think this has been mostly talked about. Yeah, they secretly choose cards. It could be proceed as planned, or it could be... I thought they said there were 3 Gambits per deck, but I don't know if they talked about it. They take their Gambit deck, place it to one side, shuffle the remaining Gambit cards, and discard 1. Okay, so yeah, there's 4 Gambit cards. One of them doesn't do anything. You discard 1... and then of the 2, you choose either one of those or to proceed as planned and play normal primary. But I don't think that they've given us any idea besides the orbital strike coordinates. They really did as much as they could to make them as random as possible, which is a little bit kind of weird, but it is what it is. They wanted to avoid a situation where a totally outplayed army gets a lucky roll by a lucky win by rolling a 12. It does sound kind of like that's how they're trying to do. You get 30 points for winning that orbital coordinates gambit, which is a little funky. Could make it on some missions where deployment zones are preset. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like have the attacker with like a smaller deployment zone or something. And the defender gets, like, more space on the table to, like, deploy back in or something. I don't know. Could be cool. You could play around with it. It would be tough to construct terrain around that, but it's not impossible. You just need, like, more terrain features or more... Or even, not even, because the first player gets to move first. So the first player doesn't even care... If you know that you're going first, you don't even care about placing your models out in the open. So you could have identical terrain, and the idea is that the first player takes the first movement phase to move into the terrain rather than starting in the terrain and then getting to move up farther. So actually it's fine. Yeah, I think they should just do that. That's basically what we did in the first T5S2 event. The T5S2 Invitational. We did deploy first, go first, but the mission or the terrain sets were like super duper advantage for the second player. And it made the distinction much more interesting. First player had a ridiculous advantage start of 9th edition. It was insane. Do I think flyers will be more usable in 10th edition? I have to imagine that they will. I think they'll probably stick with the strategic reserve restriction, but the ability for them to see through walls is kind of insane. Because they can ignore the obscuring element of ruins. And I think that like gives them a lot of interesting power. You come in turn 2, but like it's impossible to hide from them. Like they'll get you. I think that's interesting and cool. So I bet they'll be more useful. I'm even like I played Double Harpy at a couple games on stream, and I really liked them. I actually didn't really feel that bad about playing Harpies or playing aircraft in the current version. But to be fair, it is Harpies. They are one of the better aircraft for sure. Are GW choosing psychic powers now, or are there going to be ways to customize? To our knowledge, there are no ways to customize psychic powers. Iruna has a good point that there may be enhancements that are psychic focused, but right now it doesn't look like you will be able to customize. But that said, I don't think we've really gotten too many spoilers for like the truly psychic focused units or factions. Got a little bit for Tyranids, but it was just Swarmlord, who's like sort of the mediocre psychic guy, I guess, and he just has a little bit of a psychic flamethrower. The demon psychic powers we saw a little bit of. The only optionality there is whether or not you overcharge the spell to potentially hurt yourself or deal more damage. But we haven't seen like Thousand Suns and Grey Knights. I imagine will have a lot more to do in the psychic phase. Like Thousand Suns, Grey Knights, Eldari, the Tyranid like psychic focused archetypes. Those will, I imagine will all have like much more interesting psychic abilities. Whether or not they'll be mutable from unit to unit, I don't know. All the units might be the same, but I imagine they'll have more optionality to them. Yeah, they're basically just an overcharged plasma, except that it's not just devastating wounds. It also the psychic stuff in demons, at least, like superpowers the spell. You get like 30% more shots, more strength, and more AP. I know Bellicor, at least specifically, it's like in his overcharged shades are absolutely ludicrous. That gun looks insane, to be honest. Didn't they say some psychers have multiple data sheets? I think they implied that different psyker data sheets would have different powers. I don't think that they said that, like, there would be multiple data sheets for, like, a weird boy or something. But I know that, like, different librarians will likely have different powers. I imagine, you know, like a Farseer Skyrunner versus a Foot Farseer may have different powers, for example. It could be that we see different psychers with like different lores, but it sounds like it's more going to be tied to their war gear as well. I don't think demons are psychic heavy. I think demons can build psychic heavy, but they're kind of middling psychic. They're not like you compare demon psychic powers to Thousand Suns, and it's like not even close. Demons like don't even hold a candle, or even Eldar. Demons are just like, oh, our HQ's cast 1, maybe. Cool. You could build Tzeentch, and you have, like, a ton of Lords of Change, and you maybe have, like... You could build, like, 6 or 7 casts a turn, but, like, that's, like, a normal Tyranid list. A normal Eldari list is, like, 8 or 9, and a normal Thousand Suns list is, like, 15. Gonna be annoying if Catalyst is on a Neurothrope. You really want to bring a Neuro Tyrant, but he has Paroxysm. I mean, just bring both is the idea, right? There's no battlefield role slots anymore, so you can just take all the psychers that you want. You just have to be able to take bodyguards for them if they need them. It could be that like Neurothropes are a 3+ invuln save and independently powerful, and they just sit in the back and don't do anything. What's the bet that Sisters of Silencers turn off psychic abilities in 6? Yeah, I think the fact that they keyword psychic a lot of the psychic abilities in the game, like psychic abilities that are on cards, not weapons, means that there's for sure going to be psychic blanks that remove psychic abilities from models. For sure, 100%. I imagine Sisters of Silence will also be either have like a super high damage ignore against psychic powers or be immune to psychic weapons too. Yeah, all greater demons cast 2 powers, but they also cost like 400 points. So you're like, I cast 2, but I can only afford 2 of me. So I cast 4, and then I have like a Herald in the back who casts 1. You don't have like units of guys casting spells and stuff like you do in the other factions. Wonder how they'll change bodyguard rules. Bodyguards are, I imagine, are just going to be, well, I think there's going to be two camps for it. I think a lot of bodyguards will just be a unit that leader units enter into. So, you know, I think like Tyrant Guard will just have Hive Tyrants added to the unit like they used to be able to do. So instead of making your units untargetable, they're just going to be a component of the bodyguard unit. There also may be units that grant a lone operative to characters, but I think that's probably going to be less often, and that may be a specific type of model. You may see, like, you know, crisis bodyguards or something, like grant lone operative to Cold Star commanders or something like that. So it makes them harder to shoot at, but I don't think that's often. I don't think that's going to be very often. Do horrors cast? No, they shoot a gun. Horrors were basically like the dry run of the new psychic system, where it's just their psychic power is just a normal gun. So I think rounding out discussion about the mission system, it sounds like all the Gambits still score 30 to the limit of 50. That means you only have to score... I guess we didn't really, like, talk about exactly how that math works. It sounds like a lot of... the only primary objective that they've discussed with us today, so far to date, is scores 15 points a turn, which means that you have to score it for 4 turns, but in order to win with a gambit, or in order to max primary with a gambit, you only need to score 20 from it, which is 2 objectives twice, which isn't too bad. But again, I think the gambits are for the situation where you're getting your shit pushed in. Generally speaking, I think if you're in a position to score highly on secondary, you're just going to do that instead. It's Stu and Mike, the design team. They did it. Unfortunately, they didn't talk about what the other gambits do. So we have emergency evacuation, delaying tactics, and orbital strike coordinates. I like the idea of those. I wonder if emergency evacuation requires you to move to the opponent's table edge. That seems incredibly difficult. But orbital strike coordinates, you put your units on each table quarter. And then delaying tactics, I wonder if it requires you to sit in the middle of the table. It sounds like they may require you to take different positions on the table, just based on the theme of how they work. Delaying tactics is like, oh, you have to hold them off on the objectives for as long as possible. Emergency evacuation is run off the table. And then orbital strike coordinates is everybody clear out. Stu and Mike, the most British names in the world? Except Mike is American, though. I assume it's Mike Brandt is what they're referring to there. About a War Machine anecdote, they had like player names, like mock player names in the War Machine rulebook back in the day, and they were the hosts of a popular podcast, which is always funny to me. I always laughed at that. But delaying tactics is preventing your opponent from touching your own table side. I guess, I mean, maybe. That feels like it... making it so that suddenly the onus is in your opponent's court feels like that would be far and away the strongest gambit. But I guess it depends on the situation at the time. I don't know. I can't really speculate too hard on that. Are actions still around? As far as we know, they're not. There have been no actions discussed at all. So, I don't know. Actions were a little funky. I think actions were a good idea, but I don't think that they were a good implementation of the idea. Because it just, like, the amount of additional verbiage in whatever rule was using them required to make an action work was, like, sort of insane. You had to specify like the unit type that could do it, the timing of when they could do it, the length of time it took, the situations in which it would fail, and it was just like, come on, man. I think there's certainly a better way to do that. Maybe it's just that you say that like a unit, I don't know, has to give up their ability to act in phases until a specified time, and then you could just have a rule structure surrounding that or something, but. I don't know if it's even necessary, to be honest. It sounds like there will be ways to functionally recreate actions without actually requiring the framework of the action structure, and I think that's fine. Maybe you won't lose 5 units to knights in a turn? Who knows? How about those knights being both Imperial and Chaos stuck together for the new knight households? Codex Knight households is the new system. Boarding actions might still have them, and there's a reference in the recent combat patrol about battle line units securing objectives to make them sticky. I believe that we did just talk about the combat patrol. I believe that the combat patrol, which is not linked in this frickin' thing. What is the point of this page? Why am I even here? I believe that the combat patrol was just basically the shock troops ability that we saw off of the Astra Militarum preview. Yeah, I guess they didn't specify, but I would be shocked if that wasn't basically just identical to shock troops, to be fair. But you're not wrong, Nicholas. That certainly could be an action that they do. I think it just would require them to hold on the objective for a turn, to be honest. Want to see if Imperial Agents gets a new army rule set? I'll never say never, but I wouldn't hold my breath on Imperial Agents being a functional faction by itself. I think that it does seem likely to me that Imperial Agents are just designed to slot into other Imperial armies. I mean, they would be missing so many unit types if they were their own army. It would be kind of cool to be able to, like, I don't know, take Arbite armies or something, but, like, you know, what do you put your units in? How do you kill a tank with an Arbite army? Like, put handcuffs on it? You arrest it? What faction? Here's a question for the chat. What faction preview article are you most excited about and why? I think for me, we keep talking about Tau. I think Tau's an interesting one. Hey, Alex Kos. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate you, bud. I think that'd be awesome. The Learn to Plays and TTS tutorials are the best anywhere? What? Anywhere? Well, that's high praise, Alex. Thank you so much. I'm glad you found them useful. We'll certainly have a lot more of that coming out when the new edition is actually fully released. That's going to be... Oh, boy. That's going to be a lot of work. But I'm excited for it, actually. I really enjoy doing the tutorials and stuff. Custodes. Custodes would be interesting. It'd be cool to see if they push defensive profiles with Custodes really hard. You could see, like, Presidium Shield Custodes be, like, 4 or 5 wounds, toughness 6 or something. It'd be kind of sweet. Orcs would be cool. I would be surprised if Orcs don't end up being a vehicle army at the end of this edition. Orcs always... I mean, they're like whole... They've always had vehicles and transports as part of the faction identity, and they've always just been generically good because delivering melee stuff is much easier when you have battle wagons. Especially battle wagons that also kill your opponent with death rollers. But I have a sneaking suspicion that with like all of the abilities to like move and disembark units, there will probably be abilities to disembark and charge, and shooting out the top with buffs and stuff. I think I would be shocked if that also wasn't like a huge benefit to orcs. I bet. Honestly, I'm a little bit scared of orcs, to be fair. I think orcs are going to be amazing. Chaos Knights? Yeah, so here's what I think for Knights. I think Knights will get an amalgamated set of data sheets. And then they will get 2 detachments. It sounds like everyone was going to get 1 detachment on release. They'll get 2, and each one will have specific rules for Chaos versus Imperial Knights. So all the data sheets will probably be the same, and Chaos Knight, and they like have a couple different, like maybe there's some that can only be taken in one detachment or the other. Like Canis Rex only goes in Imperial Knight detachments, and Abominants only go in Chaos Knight detachments. But then each individual detachment gets all of the mechanics from each faction. Just so they don't have to reprint functionally identical detachments. Gotta see how much objective control they decide to get. I mean, it's gotta be like 10, right? 10 or 12 for like arbiters and stuff. That'd be shocking. Since AdMech has not been put on a spotlight for 10th edition, how do you unbreak the issues that plague the faction? How do you unbreak the issues? Like, how do you fix... I think the problem with AdMech is the problem with any, like, single-phase faction right now. Where they push one set of damage so hard that as long as that set of damage is good, it's, like, impossible to stop. It's shooting. I mean, it's like it's not that like a faction that only operates in a single phase is really good. It's that shooting factions that only shoot are exactly as good as their ability to kill things with ranged attacks. So if shooting is good, factions like Adeptus Mechanicus are unstoppable, and if shooting is bad, then that. And you see it every time. Like Adeptus Mechanicus was broken on release, Imperial Guard was broken on release, Astra Militarum is the same faction that I just talked about. Tau was broken on release, and they keep messing it up. I think the way to prevent that from happening is that you reframe the focus of the faction from being like, here's Skitarii that shoot in 2 ranks and fucking destroy knights and stuff. And you push it to more of a combined arms faction. I would even like remove so much of the focus from Skitarii bricks that like they become 10 model units that can like do cool things when they disembark transports or something. And then you make a lot more of the faction, like you redistribute the power of the faction from being all their ranged attacks to being like a mixture of Sicarians and Skitarii and Cataphront Breachers and like all of these different mid-range units that can all kind of work together, rather than it just being the gun faction, but they painted their armor red. The problem habitually, they do have melee units, chat, but the problem habitually was that their ranged units were the focus of the faction. The melee units were always kind of like whatever. They were always like outside of some very specific points in 8th edition, where you could play like full grade Electro Priests and Sidonian Dragoons for a bit in Styges. Outside of that, like one bright shining moment, they were always a gun line. And I just think that time and time again we've been shown that gun lines don't work in 40k. Like it's just not a system that's conducive to full gun line armies. Either they're too strong or they don't do anything and they die. Whereas like combined arms mid-range factions have always been like at least some modicum of playable. Like they can't find a way not to make Eldar good, because Eldar are decent at shooting and decent at fighting and good at holding objectives, and so they're always just playable to some extent. Really hoping sisters keep 20 Battle Sister bricks. I do like the 20 bricks, chat, for sure. I don't know. They're cool. It always feels like every time you see the Battle Sister list with the huge unit of Sisters of Battle with like 4 Stormbolters and like they're using the Artificer strat and they're doing mortal wounds and they're getting full rerolls and they're getting all the defensive buffs and the Hospitallers there like patching ladies up. It always feels like they're playing off the cover of the Codex, right? What is that? There's that one piece of art that's like, I think it was from the most recent Codex. And it's like Sisters of Battle. And they're in a big fight. And they're from... I guess this is... Oh, it's this one. Go back to my other thing. It's this one. It feels like you're playing this like scene, right? Where there's this like big unit of sisters and they're all like trying to fight people and their characters are like embedded in the unit and they're all buffing and like, I don't know. Like it scratches the flavor itch when you see the big Battle Sister squads. I guess it's because they play more aggressively, which is like what Battle Sisters look like they're supposed to do. But then Sisters of Battle always just like slap defend the shrine on the table, and they sit on their table edge, and they score a leap of faith points, and they don't do anything the whole game. Which is definitely doesn't feel how it's supposed to play. But I agree with you. I think that the big Battle Sister bricks play more interestingly. Why did the woman climb on top of the statue? Get a good vantage, chat. She's scouting. She's doing a little scouting. I think this, is this Canoness, like, telling her to get down? She's like, what are you... Sister, you know, Like, whatever. Sister Rachel, get down from there. What are you doing right now? You'll fall and break a leg. And then the hospitality have to pet you up. Are you serious? Is that a Dialogus, chat? Doesn't the Dialogus have, like, loudspeakers on their backpack or something? Oh, it's the Dialogus. Oh, this is her little loudspeaker thing. I just couldn't see it. You're right, chat. It is a Dialogus. I couldn't see her little floaty speaker system. I shall be. It's like, Sister Superior. The statue has been knocked down. One of us must replace it for the glory of the Emperor. Get out of here. Wonder what the toughest of Paragon Warsters would be? I know. I mean, that's the open question, right? Are they still going to be -1 damage? Who knows? The sister on Arm Day who's about to throw someone? This lady? How come sisters are always fighting witches? Oh, I guess it was because of Faith and... Was it Faith and Fury was the name of the box set that was like sisters versus Drukhari? I guess that makes sense. Paragon's T7? I wouldn't be shocked to see Paragons like T8. Honestly. If they lose damage reduction, I would expect to see an increase in toughness for sure. That's what I would expect. I think. Oh, they for sure bring the dubs with them. Yeah, for sure. There's like no way that those are... They like bring scripture with them. They're definitely like cyber birds or something, where they're like cybernetically augmented or something. They like follow orders. I don't know. T8, yeah, T8 would be wild. If they don't have any other damage reduction effects, I think T8 for sure. Serious question about cards in 10th edition. Why is the invul not where it is in the Combat Patrol cards? Right? We talked about that earlier. It's so much more, do they have it in the... Yeah, it's so much more legible in the Combat Patrol card because it's right on the top. Right there. There's nothing down here, right? I don't think we've seen any of the cards spoiled so far that has any information immediately below the stat block. So, like, yeah, why isn't that space being used? It's so weird. It feels like, I don't know. It feels like they designed the regular cards and then they hit print and then they're like, okay, let's design a set of Combat Patrol cards to that are like simple, you know, mechanically similar to these ones, and then some intern was like, sir, why don't we put the invulnerable save at the top here? And they were just like, dope. You could also indicate like the damaged mechanic up there too. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of space you could use. Yeah, I don't think you would put the entire bracketing rule, but I guess you could indicate when they change OC value, right? Because that's easy to miss. I'm gonna be honest, real talk, I did not realize that some of the units that were damaged reduced their OC value until, like, embarrassingly recently. Like, yesterday. I think I went through the entire Necron video talking about monoliths and stuff, and I did not realize that when they were damaged, their OC value went down. Which is, like, wild. Because it's buried in that rule. It's so easy to miss. And it feels like it only is going to be the case for the super heavy stuff that's like 20 plus wounds, because the 18 wounders don't do it. But also, who knows? Maybe some does, and you have to remember it. It's a little bit of cognitive load you don't need. Yeah. Anyway. Pretty wild. Pretty wild stuff. Yeah, chat. Objective control goes down when a monolith is damaged. There's that Necron article. Go find that guy. And the same for the Baneblade. I think I noticed it when I was talking about the Baneblade. I was like, oh, that's cool. It reduces OC. I wonder what else does that. I was like, oh, Monolith does. Huh. Where you at, Monolith? Here you are. Look at that. Subtract 4 from objective control characteristic. Surprise! Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like nobody... But it's not on everyone, chat. Because if we look at, like, Be'lakor, right? Be'lakor just gets -1 to hit. Dude's 18 wounds. Gets bracketed down to 6, no OC value change. Monolith, 20 wounds, OC value, or gets bracketed down to 7, -4 OC. I think it's the cutoff of 20 wounds. It's what's going to be the rule, but there's like there's no extra indicator. They just, it would have been nice if they just put a little red box, 4. Asterisk and then asterisk down here. Done. We did it, but they didn't do that, so. It is what it is. Inky's back. Hi, kitty. Have they explained how OC will work yet? Yes, they have. Actually, almost in its entirety. When you check for objectives, you full stop check the player with the most OC value worth of units within range of the objective marker holds that objective marker. So if you have OC 0, you do not hold objective markers with that model. It basically, OC 0 doesn't count for holding objectives at all because it doesn't contribute an OC value to the total. So that's good. At least we know how that works. Can I help you, Kat? What are you doing down there? Oh, you can't even see her. She's hiding. All right, chat. Well, I think that is covers most of what we want to talk about today. A lot of interesting stuff coming out of the new mission structures. So I have high hopes for Combat Patrol. I think it's largely going to be like a new player format, but I hope that it... that we see, I don't know, it could be cool to have like a competitive system. What if you have like a 2-list system where you can choose from the combat patrols that are available to your faction? Like, wouldn't that be sick? And then you have play like a list chicken, and then from those you have mutable pre-game selections, like secondaries and stuff. I don't know. It feels like a cool like off-day thing, right? Like you play the combat patrol multi-list format on Friday, and then you go and play the full GT on Saturday, Sunday when you're at a tournament or something. Like I would play the shit out of that, honestly. Drukari seems like they'll be interesting. Gonna miss Night Lords. Yeah, no. There are some like off factions that are gonna like off sub factions like that are sort of off the beaten path that I think are gonna be a little bit sad. But I imagine that they'll eventually get detachments that capture the flavor. Like there's no way that Chaos Space Marines doesn't get like a like a Battle Shock, Battle Shock Matters detachment, right? Like it's gotta happen. It'll just take a little while, I think. And when you're talking about a game that has like there's what, probably an average of 6 sub factions per faction across 20 factions. So you're talking about like 130 sub factions probably over the entirety of 40k. Like you can't represent them all. It's just it would just be so much revision. It would be insane. Yeah, probably when the codexes come out, for sure. For sure. Yep, I agree. All right, chat. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me today and talking some 10th edition stuff. I think we had a good time. This was fun. So I really appreciate it. I'm going to be live tomorrow, 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time over on the Twitchies, twitch.tv/TacticalTortoise. We're going to be playing against some World Eaters. It's a super fun matchup, and it's like super... I don't know. It's like fun every time, so that should be a super duper fun game. Please come out and watch that. If you haven't seen the video about the Space Marine stuff that came out today, please go check that out. It was a couple hours before the stream went live. And then also later this evening, I should have a video up about Chaos Demons. There's a little sneak peek of that video on the Tactical Tortoise TV channel. So youtube.com/TacticalTortoiseTV. There's a little cheeky little clip in there. So you can go check that out. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. Wondering if Nightbringer or Catan will still ignore invulns? Unlikely. It seems like invuln ignoring weapons are being toned down. So far, every single weapon that has previously ignored invulnerable saves no longer does so. So it might be a stratagem still, but I would expect invulnerable saves to be truly invulnerable in the new edition. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for hanging out, and I will